You are here at a very important turning point in NASA history. As you probably know, the Space Shuttle program has come to an end. But I want to reassure you that NASA is alive and well, and Kennedy Space Center has begun its third generation of spaceflight. We finished the International Space Station in May 2011, fully operational. To get there, new commercial cargo flights began in May 2012, and new commercial crew flights with people should begin around the end of the year. By the end of the decade, we'll be flying another new rocket called Space Launch System. The capsule on top of that is called the Orion. It had its first uncrewed test flight in December 2014. That's on display in our IMAX building. If you want to see it, just go to the west wing of IMAX where it's called NASA Now, and you'll see it at the entrance. And that will give us the ability to send astronauts beyond Earth orbit for the first time since 1972. NASA's vision for Kennedy Space Center is to be the world's premier spaceport for both government and commercial launches, so humanity can work and explore in space. During this tour, I'll tell you more about these programs, and I'll show you where it is that we'll be flying from, so you'll see how it is that NASA will achieve its vision for Kennedy Space Center. But first, we're going to begin with a greeting from the Center Director, Bob Cabana, four-time Space Shuttle astronaut. And so I'm going to ask David to please play video number 1 for you to tell you more about Kennedy Space Center. Thank you, David.
Hi, I'm Bob Cabana, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to NASA's John F. Kennedy Space Center. From launching the first Americans into space to launching humans to the moon, we've launched and carried the dreams of a nation. None of it would have been possible without the tremendous team that made it happen here on the Space Coast, that has made possible the launch of every American vehicle that carried a crew into space since that first flight 50 years ago. During this tour, you'll get a unique, behind-the-scenes look at how America wrote many significant chapters in human and robotic space history. Most recently, the Space Shuttle program that launched 135 missions culminated in the assembly of the International Space Station in low Earth orbit. The station is truly an engineering marvel and a testament to what we can accomplish when we all work together. I think one of the most enduring legacies will be the international cooperation that we've achieved in building and operating it. It's provided us the framework for how we will move forward as we explore beyond our home planet. Not as explorers from any one country, but as explorers from planet Earth. You're visiting the center at a very exciting time. Since the end of the Space Shuttle program, we've been working on groundbreaking missions that are paving the way to the future. We're focused on launching scientific and research satellites, restoring the U.S. capability to launch humans into space from American soil, forging commercial partnerships, modernizing our infrastructure and facilities to support the growing variety of government and commercial activities and missions, and working toward long-term human exploration missions on our journey to Mars. For the first time since the end of the Apollo program, which took us to the moon, NASA is taking steps to send astronauts into deep space with the new Orion exploration vehicle. We have the first spacecraft in history able to transport crews to destinations further than we've ever gone before, including Mars. As capable as Apollo was, the longest round-trip mission to the moon was only 12 days. Orion could sustain a crew of 4 up to 21 days, and when coupled with a habitability module, will allow us to undertake human missions to Mars, which will require close to a 2-year round trip. The vehicle that will carry Orion is the Space Launch System, or SLS. SLS will be the most powerful rocket in history, but more importantly, it's designed to be flexible and evolvable in order to meet a wide variety of crew and cargo mission requirements. As I said, you're in for a very special experience today. Enjoy yourself as you get a unique look at NASA and Kennedy Space Center's past historic achievements, an exciting peek at our current innovative activities, and an eye-opening view of our amazing future. Again, welcome to the John F. Kennedy Space Center.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Bob. Bob's office is coming up on the right. This is our administrative headquarters, not for all of NASA, just for this Space Center. It's a 3-story building with a 4th floor in the middle. The 4th floor is the office of the center director, Bob Cabana, 4-time Space Shuttle astronaut, commanded his last 2 missions, and his final flight in 1998 brought up the first American module to begin construction of the space station. NASA is building a new administrative headquarters. That's the 7-story office structure coming up on the right. Once it's operational, this building and some other obsolete buildings will be demolished. The next building coming up on the right is Operations and Checkout. Everybody here calls it O&C. We spent $55 million upgrading it into the spacecraft factory of the future. It's used to assemble and test the new Orion crew capsule, part of Space Launch System. The next capsule is in there right now, getting ready for its uncrewed test flight sometime in 2020. The next building coming up on the right is the Space Station Processing Facility, or SSPF. Anything we send from here to the space station is processed through this building. With the retirement of the shuttle, NASA's primary mission for human spaceflight for the rest of the decade will be the International Space Station. We finished it in May 2011 with the final flight of the Orbiter Endeavour, so it is fully operational. It has a full crew complement of 6 astronauts and cosmonauts from around the world, and they typically fly a 6-month tour of duty. The United States does not own it by ourselves. It's owned and operated by 15 nations, including the United States, Russia, the European Space Agency, Canada, and Japan. To date, they've conducted over 2,000 experiments, and then give us some examples of the research they're doing. My favorite example is a series of experiments by a joint team out of Germany and Denmark that have been sending thyroid cancer cells to the microgravity environment, and for reasons they don't know why, they become far less aggressive. So now they're trying to answer the why question, and if they can do that, perhaps they can develop a treatment for thyroid cancer. Japanese doctors that were in clinical trials with a potential treatment for Duchenne muscular dystrophy. They took the protein associated with that disease to the microgravity environment, modeled it in a way that's unique to that environment. They've completed clinical trials with dogs, and now they're in the 2nd stage of clinical trials with humans. A lot of research has to do with bone loss, because for every month you spend in microgravity, you suffer a year's worth of bone loss here on Earth. So they're looking for ways to avoid bone loss, and anything they learn up there can help us here on Earth. In fact, an American pharmaceutical company, Amgen, has a product on the market called Prolia. It's used for treating osteoporosis in women. It was tested in the microgravity environment. We and our partners have agreed to operate the space station through 2024. It was designed to last until 2028. So right now, we and our partners are discussing if we want to extend it to 2028. We're now eastbound on NASA Causeway, heading towards Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Everything on your horizon from left to right is Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Kennedy Space Center is overlaid by the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. So as we cross the Banana River, we may see manatees and dolphins. There's a small alligator out there to the left too. A manatee is a big gray hump that slowly comes up out of the water and goes back down. Or they poke their nose out of the water to get a breath of air. If we see a dolphin, it's a fin that goes up and then back down, and that's not a shark, that's a dolphin. Sometimes we see alligators too, so no promises. But as we cross the river here, we're always looking, and if you think you see something, call out, we'll take a look. Now, this year we have not seen much of manatees. Last winter, we had a toxic algae bloom in the river that killed much of the seagrass they eat. So they don't seem to have come back this year. A popular place for the manatees when they are around is coming up on the left. As we go over the bridge, you're going to see a small dock. The dock was collapsed by Hurricane Irma. But that's a popular place for the manatees when they are around, and I don't see anybody down there. But if you look on the dock, you'll see several birds. 2 of them are fakes. They are plastic owls. They were put there to scare off the pelicans. All the pelican poop on top of them tells you they don't work. If you look out the right side of the bus at 1 o'clock on the horizon, that's Port Canaveral, one of the largest cruise ship terminals in the world. Perhaps you came in on a cruise ship. Once David makes the U-turn, I'll point out to you 3 launch complexes on the north side of the Cape. They'll be outside the right side windows of the bus, and then we'll get out to take pictures. Fisherman got something quite nice. First, I don't know if I eat anything that came out of this river, but that's just my opinion. People ask us, how do you get to fish here? You basically have to be an employee. You need to have a badge to get through the security gates. Those folks are employees. Let's start with the tall, thin, white building with lightning towers on either side. That's Launch Complex 37. The Air Force leases that to United Launch Alliance, a partnership with Boeing and Lockheed Martin. We use that for a rocket called Delta IV. In December 2014, NASA used a Delta IV for the first uncrewed test flight of the Orion crew capsule, part of Space Launch System. Their next launch is scheduled for early August. They'll be launching a solar probe for NASA. It's going to dip into the outer atmosphere of the sun for the first time to sample that. Where the bottom half of the building is open, you might be able to see 3 orange and white vertical tanks, and that's the bottom half of the Delta IV rocket getting ready to launch in August. Thank you, David. Moving up the shoreline, you see the islands. Behind that, a group of buildings, and on the horizon, 4 lightning towers. The 4 lightning towers surround Launch Complex 40. That is leased to SpaceX out of Hawthorne, California. They fly a rocket called Falcon 9. SpaceX made history here in May 2012 when they became the first commercial company to send a capsule to Earth at the International Space Station. The capsule is called Dragon. It's made 14 deliveries to the space station, and the 15th delivery is scheduled to launch from here around the end of the month. Moving up the shoreline, you'll see another tall, thin, white building with 4 lightning towers to the left. That's Launch Complex 41. It's leased to United Launch Alliance with their other rocket, the Atlas V. Their next launch is scheduled for sometime in August, and they'll be launching the first uncrewed test flight of Boeing's new commercial crew capsule, the CST-100, to the International Space Station. Now, the reason in particular I want you to know about 40 and 41, going back to the what's next question. With the retirement of the shuttle, NASA needs a means of delivering cargo and people to the space station. So we have 2 programs, and they're very similar. One is called Commercial Cargo, and the other is called Commercial Crew. The idea is that American aerospace companies are investing their own money in developing 21st century next generation spacecraft or taking astronauts or payloads to the space station. Commercial Cargo is fully operational. 2 companies in that program. One is SpaceX with the Cargo Dragon. The other company was called Orbital ATK. 2 weeks ago they merged with Northrop Grumman, so Orbital ATK no longer exists. Their robotic cargo ship is called Cygnus, and that flies from the NASA facility at Wallops, Virginia. With Commercial Crew, 2 companies are working on next-generation craft for sending astronauts to and from the space station. One is SpaceX. SpaceX designed the Dragon with the eventual goal of using it for people. That will launch from RPAD 39A. And the other is a capsule by the Boeing company called the CST-100, and that will launch on top of the Atlas V at Pad 41. Both vehicles are in various stages of uncrewed tests, and right now, on paper, the first test flights of people are scheduled for the end of the year.